Good afternoon, and welcome to the latest episode of the Christian Recorder Dialogue. I am your host, Chuck Hobbs, and I have the pleasure this afternoon of having two people who are very important in the voter mission with respect to the AME Church. We have this afternoon Reverend Dr. Michael McBride, as well as Sister Jackie Dupont-Walker, and I anticipate this afternoon that we will have an opportunity to discuss some of the things that the church will be doing with respect to voter suppression, with respect to voter registration, as we continue to try to educate people all across America about the importance of making sure that their voices are heard at the ballot. With that, Reverend Dr. McBride and Sister Jackie Dupont-Walker, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And for the record, I'm not a doctor just yet. I'm just a bootleg preacher.
Well, we're speaking it into existence from my mouth to God's ears. How about that? Okay. All right. And very good. And we always like to start off with giving honor to God and discussing our background. I bring greetings from Tallahassee, Florida. I am a member of Bethel AME Church, which is pastored by Reverend Julius McAllister, and our bishop is A.J. Richardson. And now I'd like to go to Reverend McBride and Sister Dupont-Walker. Tell us a little bit about your church backgrounds.
Sister Jackie, please.
Okay.
No problem. Good afternoon to all who've joined us. Ironically, I am a native of Tallahassee, Florida. I am a PK, the youngest of 5 children born to King Solomon and Eleanor Giles Dupont. My home church was Bethel AME Church, where Mr. Hobbs finds himself now. We have tag teamed. I passed the baton on, and he's there now holding down the fort. I now live in Los Angeles, California, where I am the member of Ward African Methodist Episcopal Church, pastored by Reverend John E. Cager III. I am honored and humbled to serve as the social action officer of the AME Church in its international scene. I am so glad to be here today because we're talking about the AME Church's voter mobilization movement, AMV Alert, and all of its partners.
Thank you so much. Reverend McBride.
Yes, I'm a native of the Bay Area, San Francisco, California. I'm a 4th generation holiness Pentecostal, which means that in my tradition, we do speak in tongues, roll on the floor, swing from the chandeliers, and on a good Sunday, we levitate. But in my strand of Pentecostalism, our origins emerge from the Methodist tradition. And so we have deep roots in Methodism. Obviously, the African Methodist Episcopal Church is the longest, oldest, and most, I think, important expression of Black self-determination, particularly as it relates to our understanding of what it means to worship God, but to also prioritize the liberation of Black people and our families and our children. And so I currently lead the Way Church in Berkeley. This is my 15th year pastoring. I've also had the privilege over the last decade or so to lead the Faith in Action, formerly PICO National Networks division related to racial justice, gun violence prevention, mass incarceration, and have most recently in the last couple of years pulled together a number of faith leaders across the country to launch the Black Church PAC, Black Church Action Fund, which is an effort to really mobilize and leverage the power, the inherent power of Black churches to engage politically on our own terms, to ensure that we're not always asking to come to someone's table, but rather we're building our own.
Very good. And again, welcome to you both. Let's get right to it. As you both know, this summer, we, the people of the United States of America, are celebrating the 55th anniversary of President Lyndon B. Johnson signing the Voting Rights Act back in August. Well, he signed it in June of 1965, but it went into effect in August of 1965. Understanding that, we still find ourselves in a position where voter suppression and lack of voter education continues to stymie the Black vote across the United States of America. I want to start with Sister Dupont-Walker first, and I have 2 questions relating to this. Number one, what can the AME denomination specifically do to combat voter suppression efforts from your point of view?
I'm glad you asked that. We have AMV Alert. In 1999, and for those who were around then, you remember the horror at being introduced to the moral majority. We thought that was the worst thing that could ever happen to this country's electoral process. Since then, we've had the Tea Party, and now we have something that defies description and name. AMV Alert is a way for every member of the AME Church to mobilize within their church, within their faith family, within their community. And if they have to go it alone and just find partners, they can do it that way. And so we believe that voter suppression starts with the basic philosophy and theological undergrounding of our church, that each one of us has a calling. And what we're called to do, we must do to the maximum. So as a person in lay ministry, I am called to social justice and social action. It is something I can't not do. And so it's very, very important for every AME to know that AMV Alert is there to work with them. And wherever else we find ourselves partnering, there's an opportunity to bring all the tools of AMV Alert to the table. It is a step-by-step process for anyone to pick up and take. And that's one of the reasons we're so happy to be partnering with Black Church Action Fund, one of our key partners, and this year probably our strongest link. But many of us know that we can't do this alone. We have to work together. We have to link arms. And when we link arms, no one will come between us, and we will have victory in November. Voter suppression for us is so serious that it is important for every person to make this their everyday conversation, action, and focus, as well as be at the top of their prayer list.
Amen. Reverend McBride, what are your thoughts about voter suppression efforts? What can our denomination do specifically to address that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Sister Jackie just stated. I do believe that the power of Black people are our institutions. And there is no greater institution than the Black church. For good or for bad, the Black church is the quintessential and longest running uninterrupted institutional resistance to white supremacy. For 400 years or so, we have receipts, daily receipts of figuring out how to mobilize the preponderance of Black people to engage in both resistance, sustenance, survival, and at times opportunities to advance an agenda that benefits not just people in our congregations, but people who are literally living in the neighborhood surrounding our congregation. So to that end, we know that there will be a historic, unprecedented effort to suppress the vote of Black people. We know that there are efforts to reduce the number of polling places. We know that there are efforts to disrupt the United States Postal Service. We know that with COVID, there are going to be all kinds of barriers, both seen and unseen, that we're going to have to overcome if we are going to get our votes counted in November. And so the AME denomination can do amazing work by leveraging our local congregational, both institutional spaces and our leadership of said congregational spaces. We have platforms, we have information portals and pathways and websites and Facebook profiles and Instagram pages that we can disseminate the most accurate information. One of the greatest challenges we're going to have this election cycle is misinformation. And voter suppression is the act of trying to suppress the number of people who are able to vote, as well as the number of people who turn out to vote. And so being able to register to vote early, being able to request an absentee ballot or vote by mail option gives us multiple choices on election day. It is tantamount to us trying to fill out a test with single word answers and us showing up with a multiple choice. We change now our voting campaigns, our voting get out the vote efforts to a multiple choice exam where both answers are the right answers. And so the earlier we can continue to enforce this idea in our congregational members consciousness that voting early, getting registered to vote, checking your status, requesting absentee ballots, all of those things will at least give us the information we need. So on voting day, or at least voting week, we can begin to go to the polls in droves, whether it's dropping off ballots early or certainly showing up and standing in the lines to make sure we vote.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sister Dupont-Walker, again, as we stated at the outset, having grown up in Tallahassee, Florida, myself, everyone knows your father, the Reverend King Solomon DuPont, as one of the legends of the civil rights movement here in Tallahassee. In fact, in my office here in Tallahassee, I have a picture of your father, as well as the late Reverend C.K. Steele, sitting on buses back during a period of time in which Black people were relegated to having to sit at the back of the bus. Yeah. Knowing that history and having watched much of that yourself firsthand, I'd like to ask you first, in what ways is the AME Church unique with regards to, at this moment, being able to push back against voter suppression, as well as being able to help lift voter education in the days ahead?
You know, one of the things that I jokingly talk about is the fact that, you know, God prepares us for everything that's coming our way. And if we're just faithful and available, it happens. The AMV Church has never had to have a discussion about whether or not working for the poor and disenfranchised is a part of our agenda. The AMV Church uniquely puts out front that this is a kind of ministry and service that we're called to do. The AMV Church's structure is set up so that we can communicate from local levels up and from the Episcopal level down. And so when a local church wants to move, it knows it already has that calling. We're simply looking for the partners to get it done. The structure of the AMV Church through the Episcopal District, the annual conference, to the local congregation, organizes us in ways that we can combine and create our own internal partnerships. For example, with AMV Alert, we have 17 components and departments that have said, let's make this happen within our own context. Reverend McBride mentioned all of the ways we can communicate. In fact, this pandemic gives us more attention than we had before. We're all sitting captive. We have people attending who were on our list for healing and wellness. We call sometimes the sick and shut-in list. We have their attention now. They can get involved. So we don't have the struggle. The other piece is we actually resource that and organize, and we call it what it is. We actually put out information that says this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do, the do's and don'ts. So we're empowered to make it happen. I believe that the African Methodist Episcopal Church, as the first civil rights movement in this country in its founding in 1787, has a legacy to protect. So for us, we have 223 plus years of working at this, and something we want to share with any other denomination. So when we say get out and vote, it's done. When we talk about registering, it's done. Congressman Clyburn, even in this dialogue several days ago, said he is feeling now and urging us to make October voting month. Start as early as you can. Don't wait because of some of the shenanigans and schemes and scams that we're hearing about. And so as we're talking, Reverend McBride and I, about applying for your absentee ballot, when you get it, don't hold it. Even if you want to, send it in. Even if you just want to go ceremoniously to the polling place and touch the ballot box on election day, you know your vote is already in. So this church has unabashedly, unashamedly, unapologetically said that this is a part of what God called us to do when we were organized. And so all we have to do is to claim that legacy and be faithful and available and do it. And I will tell you that congregations like Bethel, and I've watched, have actually birthed people who are now leaders in the elective field. Many congregations have birthed people. The area of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania has birthed people who are strong civic leaders. And so this church has in it the energy and the lay and clergy who are called to this work. And God forbid that we fail in 2020, because this is an important year.
Absolutely. Reverend McBride, to that end, I'd like to ask you, can you talk a little bit about the evolution of the Black Church Political Action Committee, and also discuss Live Free and how those two organizations can help with what Sister Dupont-Walker said in regards to also coordinating with other church denominations to ensure that the body of faith is able to go out and motivate people to vote this October and heading into November?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I have found that as a mentor told me when I was beginning our work in 2009-10, that a disorganized truth will find it difficult to defeat an organized lie. And what we have right now is a organized lie that has coalesced around white supremacy, Christian nationalism, and anti-Black racism. While this may not be new to our experience, it is certainly much more public than it's been in at least a generation. The Black church has both the memory and the infrastructure to be able to pull on the resources of our past and the brilliance of our present to defeat this clear and present danger to Black life, to Black institutions, and certainly to our Black futures. And so what we are trying to do is organize our truth so we can defeat the organized lies that show up in the public square and in public policy every single day. The Live Free campaign was our first effort then to organize predominantly Black churches, but also Latino churches and other congregations that are directly impacted by gun violence, mass incarceration, and the lack of opportunity, particularly around economic stability and jobs and other forms of economic sustenance just in our daily life, right? And so the Live Free campaign started in 2009 to scale up gun violence prevention efforts that have been very successful over the last 10 years. At least in a dozen cities, we've decreased gun violence in within communities, Black and brown communities, by 50% in a number of cities, as high as 70% in a few other cities. We've been able to pass voter rights initiatives in the states of Florida, Virginia, California. We've been able to mobilize Black churches to work together across our lines of difference, primarily through a 501c3 kind of partnership. What we found, though, particularly after the last election cycle, is that we have not yet figured out how to organize ourselves as denominational bodies, as Black church leaders with significant platforms on social media, to do the kind of political work that does not find itself caught in the 501c3 type limitation. And so rather than putting our 501c3 organizations at risk, we said, what if we started some parallel efforts that allowed individuals to make public stands and campaigns that we know are in the interest of Black people, Black church people in particular, around political advocacy and choices. And so that effort really allowed us to give birth to the Black Church PAC, which is not a formal partner with the AME Church. I just want to say that because of the tax designations. But we did start the Black Church Action Fund, where you can go to blackchurchaction.org and you can see the real powerful formal partnerships that we have with denominations. That allows us to be able to publicly move in spaces where we can, across denominational Reformation designations, we can do work together in cities across the country. And we know this, that Black communities have an abundance of several institutions. Sad to say, one of them are liquor stores and the other are Black churches. And I found that liquor stores seem to work better together than Black churches. And so we got to get together as Black church people and say the liquor store can't be open more than the Black church. We got to do our work together. And if we show up in neighborhoods, Church of God in Christ, the AME Church, the Full Gospel Church, the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, the Progressive Baptist Church, the American Baptist Church, the non-denominational churches, if we all show up together in cities all across the country, we can indeed do amazing work together without having to change any of our denominational doctrines or leaders, or it's just about us coming outside to play. I'll close with this. The scripture says in 1 Corinthians 12 that we are many members, yet one body. And the head does not say to the hands, how come I can't touch? The feet doesn't say to the ears, how come I can't hear? But all of us have a certain role to play for the body to operate as a whole. And that is what the Black Church Action Fund and all of our efforts, we're trying to just be a space, kind of like Voltron, if you used to watch cartoons. I guess now maybe Power Rangers for all these new people, amen. Where there comes an enemy and you can't defeat the enemy by yourself. You need to come together and form the defender of the universe. Well, I believe that's the Black church for Black people, and I pray that we can continue to figure out better ways to partner to defeat these enemies that are facing us.
Amen, Rev. And one of the things that's interesting that you just mentioned, Rev McBride, is you discussed the 501c3 designation. And for our watchers or listeners who may not be aware of that, what that basically is under the tax structure here in the United States of America, certain corporations and churches are corporations ostensibly are not able to actually actively engage in political pushes for certain candidates. But certain organizations can help, again, with registration efforts as well as informational efforts. With that backdrop, we all remember that back in 2016, while Hillary Clinton was able to get more of the popular vote than Donald Trump, she failed in the Electoral College. And there have been a number of pundits and political scientists who have in the years since analyzed that more votes in Detroit, more votes in Cleveland, more votes in Miami, areas where particularly certain areas, the Black vote turnout was somewhat suppressed, not because of hijinks, but because of straight apathy. My question is, what do you specifically see, both of you, and I'll throw it to Sister Dupont-Walker first, what specifically can we do over the next 67 days to make people understand how very critical this particular election is in our lives?
I think first, the kind of thing that John Thomas is doing with the Christian Recorder is absolutely required. And as we talk about every denomination and every church and every sorority in the Divine Nine, if we talk about the Mason, the Order of the Eastern Stars, everybody has to make this their primary conversation. As a grandmother and a mother, when there's something I need my family to do, I call them, I make sure I get their attention. I make sure they make a commitment to me. I make sure they report back to me on what they're doing. That's what we have to do. It is that important. We also know that there are target states that have already been identified as places where the Black voter turnout can make that difference, especially as it relates to the Electoral College. And those states are, as identified, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Florida, Virginia. And then we add on Texas because the number of electoral votes it has, and maybe California because it has the largest number. We know family and people in those places. We've never let geographic boundary and distance keep us apart. We know how to do Underground Railroad speak in 2020 to get our message over. And it doesn't have to be just with people who are African American or brown. We can make sure that those people who say they're with us, who they understand what our plight is, also make the commitment to make that difference. And I do want to add, though, that if you go to the do's and don'ts, there are things that we can do as 501c3s. We spend a lot of time focusing on what we cannot do. For example, if there is an issue on the ballot that directly impacts a mission of our churches, we can actually promote for or against that particular issue. An example, in California, Proposition 209, 30 plus years ago, was on the ballot. It called itself a civil rights initiative. It actually eliminated affirmative action. Because we weren't educated, we voted for it. And it not only eliminated affirmative action in educational institutions, which was a specific, it actually wiped it out across the state and then later across the nation. On the ballot this year, 2020, is Proposition 16. It will reverse the action of 209. It is important for us to advocate for that, to share that information, to educate the public. We can educate. There is so much more we can do, and it's coming together to make that happen. I had the wonderful opportunity of being a part of a training session that Rev McBride has as a part of our partnership with Black Church Action Fund. Those training sessions are now taped. We can take those training sessions and actually use them on our smartphones to convince our neighbors. We don't go to the barbershop anymore, but if we still talk to our barbershop friends, we can send them those messages. It's extremely important. This has to be something we wake up thinking about. I'm sleeping less than 4 hours a day because when I wake up, I get on, I text, I call, I make sure in the other time zone, I'm communicating with people. We must make this our highest priority to educate, make sure they're registered, make sure the registration is protected, is updated, and mobilized. So we're now looking at October as being that movement month to make it happen. We have to absolutely make this important. And let me add, along with the census, we cannot forget the census. All of this is about the Black presence counting, that Black matters, Black count matters, Black vote matters. That's what we have to do. And I just want to say that coming together is so important. And AME Church, please hear me. The partnerships are important. Be sure they're authentic partnerships that you have tested out and know that it's going in the right direction, that it's not just hyperbole, that someone's giving you the words you want to hear without you digging underneath. And if you trust us to bring you some of that information, you will know that groups like Black Church Action Fund, like People for the American Way, like NAACP Legal Defense Fund are tried and tested and authentic. In a crunch, you can utilize them. It is so exciting to have us all linking together on the same purpose, because I love the saying that the disorganized truth can be disrupted by an organized lie. And we know that the organized lies are prevailing this week at a meeting that we won't discuss. So we need to be very, very clear that the disorganized truth will be no more, because we are organized, we are linked, and we're going to make sure that it's not the sound bite that catches us, but that we are carrying the truth, and that as trusted voices, we are giving forth the best that can be repeated, replicated, and carried everywhere we go. That's our mission. So that on November 3rd at 8 p.m., wherever we are, we will have no regrets. We will have done the very best that we could, and then victory will be ours.
Yes, ma'am. Sister Dupont-Walker, I want to follow up real quickly. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the AME Toolkit that they may be able to download that can help further educate them on some of the issues that you just described?
Okay. The AME Toolkit is on the website for AMV Alert, AMV-alert.org. You can scroll down the first page, and it has step-by-step items that one can do, where you can go to register, where your polling place is, how you can engage with other groups and organizations. The toolkit is at the bottom. You click on it, you can download it. We invite you to take pages. If you're not AME, never been AME, don't want to be AME, take whatever pages you can use to do your work and do your work. It also has in it a list of organizations that are ready on the ground to help. So on election day, if where your region is, that someone is telling you that the polls are closed and will open tomorrow, you know that you can call the Brennan Center. You know you can call NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Find out that is not true. If it's serious enough, they will absolutely send lawyers immediately to your help. They will put people on planes to come. It is important to know that there is an arsenal ready to help, that we are prayed up, we are ready, and all we're looking for now is for us to act. So that toolkit begins to do that. The training sessions that Black Church Action Fund have are available on our website. You can click on them. We will have the link for you to go there. So in real time, you can go back. If you thought you heard something you don't understand, you can find out exactly what it is you should be doing and what the real truth is. It is so important for us to understand that trickery is the order of the day. And we want not to be wanting, because we are not studied up and ready to do the work that has to be done in this season.
Yes, ma'am. And Reverend McBride, can you tell our viewers a little bit more about the Black Church Action trainings? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity to amplify, as Sister Jackie has stated. We hope for the next 60 days. Starting on Tuesday, September 1st, we're going to launch with a big event that we're calling Black Church Rocks, a Souls to the Polls kickoff for the last 60 days of this cycle. We're going to have gospel artists from Erica Campbell to Brian Courtney Wilson, Lena Bird Miles, Joy Starr. We'll have appearances by Bishop Charles Blake, Bishop Frank Reed, even some celebrities that include Lawrence Fishburne and Anthony Anderson. We're going to do a big effort to get the information out about our programming that is training and textathon driven. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we will have trainings that will allow people to get a 15-minute training on voter registration and absentee ballot, vote by mail, training on digital organizing, how to do digital organizing, and get a training on how to conduct a Souls to the Polls, Get Out the Vote campaign. Go to rocks.online, ROCS, rocks.online, and register for the trainings. All you have to do is enter your information, and we will be in touch with you with reminders every time a training is happening. You can register for those trainings. You can make sure that those trainings are actually driving you every week to the right particular training that you care about. And we will make sure that you're getting consistent training opportunities every week. The trainings will be repeated, as Sister Jackie has powerfully stated. And we're even hoping to give you all these trainings so you can play them on your own time. You can make sure that people are able to capture this if they can't make these particular times for whatever reasons. But our hope is that one of the ways we organize our truth is to educate ourselves. Sometimes we just don't have all the information. And so rocks.online is a platform portal that allows us to do that. This information, as it is captured, allows us then to send you real-time alerts of trainings that are happening, events that are happening. And then we hope to have textathons, which would allow us to be able to do peer-to-peer texting with individuals in our congregations. And listen to this, people who are in our neighborhoods that may not attend our congregations. We have been able to secure the amazing voter files that many campaigns use across the country. We have access to that information, and we're going to make it available to the AME Church and the Kojic denominations and, the Full Gospel. All of these denominational bodies will have this information through our tools for free. And so imagine every Tuesday and Thursday of every week, we have 10 individuals from across the country sign up to do textathons. And we can literally in one evening text 50,000 people in about 2 hours using this tool. 10 people can reach that many folks. This is a whole new level of evangelism. Somebody say amen. You got to send out a track. Now you can just send a text and you can have some really meaningful conversations to underscore everything that we've been saying, that this is one of the most important stewardship moments of our lifetime. We are literally stewarding our democracy. We are stewarding our nation. We are stewarding creation. And so we want to use all the tools at our disposal. We will also give you lower thirds, a whole social media toolkit that you'll be able to use on Sunday mornings on your programs to help people be able to have access to these trainings that you see on your screen. Help people be able to know this week, sign up for this training. This week, don't forget registration deadlines is happening here. So we will give you all of this information. And now it's just really up for us to put it into practice and use it. Jesse Jackson says that David picked up some rocks that were laying around to defeat Goliath. Well, now we are those rocks that must be picked up off the ground to defeat these giants we face. And I do believe that we are up for the task.
Indeed.
Can I add a couple things, Chuck?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I also want to point out that the bishops of the AME Church have actually done messages for their congregations, and you can feel free to go to the website and pick up your bishop's message if you have not heard it already. Bishop Mitchell, our president of the council, has done a message. Our senior bishop, Bishop Richardson, has done a message. Bishop White of the 4th District in the Midwest, where some of those target states are, has done a message. Bishop Few has done a message. And so we want to make sure that we have you have that opportunity. And other messages are coming. We will have heads of components doing those messages, which is extremely important. Also, 60 days out will be a daily countdown. So for those people that are a little bit shy of the digital age and those who want to spend more time on Facebook, the daily countdown will have something for you to do every day. And so if you'll take that as kind of your to-do list as it relates to this election, you'll be able to do it. So it will come out from the AME Church's website every night at midnight. It will come out every night at midnight so you can be involved in education and mobilizing. And our AME Church website is ame-church.com, ame-church.com. I hope that what you're hearing from me as well as from Reverend McBride, that we are saying this is the essence and core of what the historic Black church is doing, has been ordained to do. And it only is the church because we are the church, not because we're going to a building, but because we are the church, and wherever we go, the message is carried forth. And so this is an opportunity, if at no other time in your Christian walk, your adult life, or your young adult life, because we even have the scouts who are working to make sure their parents and grandparents who may not be involved in the past are involved. So this is one where the children will even teach. This is critically important, that we make this something that we can't not do.
Absolutely. And when we talk about the times in which we live, it seems as if not a week goes by where some Black man, woman, or child, unarmed, mind you, is killed during an engagement with law enforcement. This past weekend, Jacob Blake III, a grandson of AME clergy and a cousin of AME clergy, was shot 7 times in the back in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He more than likely will never walk again. And once again, his shooting has projected an issue that seemingly will not go away with regards to how law enforcement engages with Black people in the United States of America. Having said that, as father and as a mother and grandmother, what are your thoughts about police engagement with the Black community, and what can our AME denomination do to address the issue of police reform in the days ahead?
Well, you know, I speak as someone who has been a victim of police brutality. I was physically and sexually assaulted by police officers in 1999. I was a youth pastor in San Jose at Bible Way Christian Center. And every day since that day, I've had to live with the physical marks in my body, as well as the trauma that never leaves. This idea that our lives are so vulnerable, so disposable to this system is a terrible reality we are all forced to live with literally every day of our life. I hope that we do a couple things. Number one, we historicize this struggle as it relates to state violence. I hope we appreciate that the anger that we are seeing manifest across the country is a historical reality that for several hundred years, in the minimum, Black people have been demanding for the state to stop killing us, to stop brutalizing us. This is not just about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Mike Brown and Sandra Bland. This is literally 300 years. Every generation of Black people in this country have had to, as a child, as an adult, and as an elder, ask the police departments of this country to not brutalize Black people. And so I hope that our conversations, particularly as the prophetic cutting edge, the vanguard of the Black church, that we are moving beyond conversations about just reform, but we are talking about abolition of this system of policing. And I know for some of us, that feels like such a radical statement, but I want to remind you that the AME church is a church of abolition. Your bishops were some of the most prominent abolitionists in the history of this country.
Amen.
And can you imagine if folks were asking to reform slavery back in the 16 and 1700s? No, folks were demanding abolition of the system of Black degradation and torture and terror of Black bodies. Obviously, this level of police violence that we're seeing should not cause us to label every police officer as a terrorist, so to speak. But we should be able to clearly say that what is it about a system of policing that actually turns good people into bad cops? That is the system we must abolish. And in its place, we must take the tax dollars, our tax dollars that are used to fund these kinds of terrible systems, anti-Black terror systems. We must take those dollars and refund the people and put those resources into public safety initiatives like the ones we lead that lead to a reduction in gun violence. We must refund the people these resources and make sure people have food and housing, We must advocate for guaranteed basic income strategies. Our tax dollars that are being spent on police departments can be spent on making the lives of Black people better, so crime is not something that visits us so persistently. And so as you can see, I can get really animated, excited about this issue because I am one of these folks that believe the Black church should not become the wet blanket on the radical liberational efforts that are happening in this moment. Let us lift our eyes up to higher ground. Let us tap into the abolitionist tendencies of Absalom Jones and these other great bishops that I walked through the basement of the Mother Church in Philadelphia and saw their pictures and listened to their words. These are the individuals that I hope we can channel, and the good officers who remain, we can use them to provide true public safety. But a lot of these racist cops, they got to go, and may the Black church be the voice to make sure institutionally they're run out of our police departments and run out of our communities.
Reverend McBride, I would like to follow up with that, just to add that with the great work that you and Sister Dupont-Walker are doing over the next 60 some odd days. I had a post up earlier today on my Facebook page where I was discussing qualified immunity. And like Sister Dupont-Walker said earlier, we can't necessarily push particular candidates, but we can advocate for and discuss issues. And one of the things that I would, if it's not already being done, I would implore all of our pastors and lay members who are watching today to make sure that you educate yourselves on what qualified immunity is, because again, in America, money matters. And so when a law enforcement officer can go out on their duty on a day-to-day basis and know that if they shoot someone and kill them, if they are unarmed, not only will they more than likely be protected by the local prosecutor, but they also know that they will also be able to keep their jobs or get a new job, and they know that they won't be sued out of existence. If we end qualified immunity, and as it stands right now, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump share the same opinion on not wanting to end qualified immunity. I would like to see that pressed even further over the next 60 days and well into the next administration, because again, until people are hit in the pocket, they're not going to stop doing what they're doing. But when they realize that that house can be taken and realize that pension can be gotten to, that's when folks are going to think twice about, well, do I really want to shoot someone about an improper lane change? Having that, Mr. Dupont-Walker, what's your thoughts on all of this?
You know, this is something that goes back to my graduate school days. When I was in school of social work at Atlanta University, this was an issue that was on the table, how the police were responding and whether or not it was appropriate for some of the calls they received. My master's thesis was about setting in place a psychiatric emergency team that would go out from Grady Community Hospital along with the police or instead of the police when there was an emergency. Now, it was funded for a brief period of time. And then later I found out those funds were pushed into the police budget. And I fear that's what's happened, that somehow the systems that did work have been pushed into the police budget. So when we hear defund the police, we automatically start counting down on Xing out bodies of police officers. There is so much in that police budget that can be used for the work that has to be done. And the church has to be educated. Our clergy that have the bully pulpit and the respect of the community have to be present at the hearings when these things are being discussed. They have to be not just there for the prayer or because someone invites them for a particular message in a prime spot. Our clergy have to be there among the people. The people need to see our trusted voices speaking up and hanging with the people to make sure it happens. We talk about the Black Lives Matter movement that's in the street now. There's something we can do. The church, if you can't go in the street because of some kind of medical condition or because of other circumstances that keep you from going, we can be our own form of Panthers at the phone, Panthers at the text, Panthers in communicating with the officers. We can do exactly what we need to do. The Great Panthers were the bomb in the 60s. We need to revisit the Great Panthers, bring them back. Those of us who are elder, who can't be in the street, we can be out there. It's extremely important. The other thing that's important is there was a book written in the 70s about Black towns. And what it reported is that the identification of unacceptable behavior is tied directly to the way the authority figure looks at the behavior. And if that authority figure is not of the community, they see the behavior as being unaccepted. It was called Black Towns because in places where Black authority figures were policing, there was less likelihood of that behavior sitting on the corner, the young Black men running down the street, someone turning their back to be seen as defiant and something that was illegal, perhaps trying to hide something. We're told legally we cannot require police officers to live in the communities they police, but I wish we could find a way to do it because it's so important that that happen. I think we also need to stop glorifying. The church needs to be key in glorifying so many police-oriented movies on television. Some that give a good message of the good cop, some that don't. But why are we spending so much time with that kind of collateral on television for our kids to look at? It makes it look as if almost every problem in the world is going to be solved by one vehicle, and that is the police department. But more than anything else, what keeps us from making sure that the recruits to that police department are not some people from our community who do what we need? So while we look at readjusting the budget, making sure that the calls they get are appropriate, we need to make sure that some of us go. And there's so much peer pressure to make sure that people do not become police officers. In my own family, I have a son who retired as a police officer, a daughter who left as a police officer under disability. My own husband had to get a police badge in order to supervise and keep the state police on the grounds that he worked, employed, and they were all Black and brown. But let me tell you that we must be ready to carry this message to a new generation. When I first moved to Los Angeles in the 70s, one of my first assignments was to go to do training for the California State Police. Why was I asked to go and do that training? They had discovered on their target ranges something they call the running nigger target. Now, I don't use that word, but that's what it was called. We had to go to a remote area of California where there were predominantly European police officers who came in with dark shades, cowboy boots and a hat, put their feet up on the table and said to these two Black facilitators, "You're not going to teach us anything. They got our body here, but you're not going to touch us." It was tough, but that was the climate in the 1970s. Here we are in 2020, and we almost need another one of those sessions, but it's too big to have those sessions. So the dialogue that we must have with the police, not just being happy that the police chief invites us to a special meeting and gives us a special parking place and we get escorted to the meeting, but when we get in the meetings, when we call them to the meetings in our community, we have to be willing to deal with the tough issues. We have to be willing to be consistent in the message. We have to be willing to check back and see what they're doing. The Black church sits as the bully pulpit to do that. The Black church sits as the trusted institution and voice to do that. The Black church has the calling and mandate in our theology to do this. The Black church must be there to make sure that police reform includes the right people working in the departments, the right mission for the department, the right partnership for the department, and the accountability to our community for protecting, not just being an authority figure over to direct us. With 5 sons, I cannot tell you how many nights I was on my knees. Now with grandsons who are of the age of driving, when I look at what happened, to Jacob, who was really working in his calling as a security officer, trying to break up an attack. He's the one who reportedly called the police because there was a disturbance happening. And then to see what happened to him, there is nothing but heartache that comes when you see someone in their calling trying to do the right thing. But we must, in fact, be restless and unaccommodating in letting the police know that where they're good police, we support and will partner, but where they're not, we're going to be the worst irritant that you've seen. This is called the good trouble that John Lewis talked about. And I think it's very, very important for that to be the reality that the Black church makes its primary mission. In our statement, it says, working with the poor and disenfranchised is not an addendum to an already crowded agenda. It is the essence of who we are and what we must be about. And there's nothing more important than this particular topic that not only creates a sense of fear and anger, and the anger that comes even when you're a person of faith, when you watch this happening, But it is time for us to act with our mustard seed faith and step out and make sure that this roll call of young men and women and all of us who are senselessly killed by those who don't understand their role to serve ends. It must stop, and it must stop because we refuse to let it go forward.
Amen. Another area that I would like to discuss with both of you is the fact that in the week since Senator Kamala Harris has been elevated to serve as the running mate to Joe Biden on the Democratic ticket, she has been the subject of so many racist as well as sexist attacks on social and traditional media. Some of the sexist attacks have even come from Black men who have made all sorts of inappropriate comments about her appearance, about her past, and things of that nature. Understanding that, what are your thoughts with regards to how we as a denomination can go forth to combat the lies that are being told about her, the rumors that are being told, and just some of the salacious imagery that we are seeing on a day-to-day basis on social media and traditional media to protect our sister from these attacks? Sister Dupont-Walker, would you mind taking that first, and then I'll shift over to Reverend McBride?
The first thing I want to say to us is stay focused. Distraction has been the key tool in keeping us away from our mission. I'm so proud that many of our leaders were part of the first letter that went to Mr. Biden. And then, as we know, we speak underground railroad speak. Another letter went from the daughters and sons of the Anvil with the very same message that you need to consider this. The fact that she is there, we have to call answered prayer. And so I think we must be the people who promote who she is as a person, what she has done as a professional and a Christian woman, what she proposes to do as a legislator and someone who actually has been a prosecutor with an effort to do things in a very different way. I think that what we have to do is to get on those talk shows where they're talking her down. We have to be among the texting that goes back, because I see it happening from the other perspective on some of ours. We have to eliminate those people from our conversations when we find them in our groups trying to make the work happen. But more than anything else, we must take education and fact out there. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta, a part of the Divine Nine. Whatever we have amongst ourselves goes away, because we have to be there to say, this is who she is as a person. This is what she brings to the table as a person. Because clearly we know the other side, the other person or person who's running, do not bring to the table what's important for us. So the Black church, as it speaks up for anything that is unacceptable and a lie, must speak up for Kamala Harris and who she is and what she brings to the table. And I think finally, the Black church must speak against the issues of racism, which I believe are core to all of our issues. And much of what is being said about her, that was also said when Barack Obama was running, is a continuation of the racism theme. And it's our opportunity to bring that up again and to remind those people of goodwill who say they're with us that their silence when they're amongst themselves is not okay. That when people are amongst themselves where little statements of discrimination can be overlooked, that they stop and make sure it is no longer overlooked. That absolutely anything that speaks of discrimination and injustice and racism at this time must not be tolerated under any circumstances. So we must become totally intolerant of what we used to just let go by in the interest of not being offensive. It is now time to be on the good offense.
Yes, ma'am. Reverend McBride, as a brother, as a Black man, I want to end with you with that last question. I'm going to give you the last word, and I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what we as Black men need to be doing to make sure that we protect our sister Kamala Harris, and we also continue to push forward to make sure that we check sexism and racism wherever it may rear their ugly heads. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I think that we as Black men have to treat sexism with the same kind of virulence and offense as we treat anti-Black racism. We obviously know that some have legitimate critiques and pain as relates to incarceration and as it relates to the ways in which this system has disproportionately impacted Black men. We can have that legitimate critique without being sexist, without being misogynistic, without laying on Kamala Harris a burden or a threshold that we could not even pass ourselves. Her record as a prosecutor was almost 15 years ago. It was way before many of us came to our own consciousness around issues related to ending mass incarceration. And yet we still know many of our family members may have been caught in that system. So I say, if you have a problem with her record, make sure that your problems are grounded in fact and not fiction. It's important, brothers, for you to know that there are people all across this world who are literally spending time targeting your Facebook page, your Instagram page with misinformation to make sure you don't vote, to create an enemy of an ally, to create an enemy of your sister. And so I want to just say to all Black men, bishops, elders, ministers, deacons, stewards, it is our responsibility to end sexism, just like it is the responsibility of white folks to end racism. Let us carry that charge forward. When we see misinformation, post the correct information, correct it in real time, and make sure that we keep educating our young people, our young men, our older men, disciple them away from misogyny, disciple them away from sexism. And let's do all that we can to make sure that we lift up our sister as an example of some of the best that our people have produced under some of the worst conditions. She need not be perfect to be our sister, nor to be our champion. Thank God that Jesus don't hold us to the standard we're trying to hold this sister to, or lest we all find ourselves lost. So that's what I would say. The stakes are high. Let's not make the perfect the enemy of the good. Let's do our best due diligence, have some discernment, and make the best decisions at all times, protecting Black women from unwarranted attacks.
With that, I thank you so much, Rev McBride. And I would like to thank both of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to sit and talk with us this afternoon about these very critical issues. I know that both were able to provide some helpful information. We have some links that we would like to show right now for those who may have been watching and listening, and they may have gone by pretty quickly. We would like to show some of those links so that you can get involved and get engaged with some of the activism that Reverend McBride and Sister Dupont-Walker are engaged in at this time. Okay. I would also like to let you know that tomorrow we have another very good TCR dialogue coming up. I look forward to interviewing the Reverend Stephen Green tomorrow. Same time, same place. And for those of you who are enjoying these TCR dialogues, you heard my dear friend and Morehouse brother John Thomas shouted out earlier this afternoon by Sister Dupont-Walker. You have to understand the work that he is doing, as well as Reverend Roderick Beelan at AME Publishing, with regards to making sure that the appropriate information is disseminated as broadly as possible across the world, as far as what our denomination is doing to not only uplift God and his love and his grace for all of us, but also to make sure that the people of God are very well aware of the issues that are pertinent to our day. With that in mind, I must let you know that effective August 15th, the AME Church had to cut the budget of all departments by about 25% for the 2020/2021 fiscal year. You understand why? COVID-19, the pandemic, has had an impact across the country, and our denomination has been impacted as well. With that in mind, if you enjoy what you are reading at the Christian Recorder, if you enjoy these TCR dialogues, I ask for you to contribute via Cash App, which is $AME Church School. Again, that's $ AME Church School, or call our office with a credit card. We do take credit cards at 615-601-0450. Or you can mail in a donation to 1722 Scovel Street, and that's in Nashville, Tennessee, 37208. And with that in mind, again, I would like to thank my editor, John Thomas. I'd also like to thank Reverend Rod Beelan. I also definitely want to give a shout out to our production supervisor, Kirtiana Freeland, as well as the graphics editor, Corwin Davis, for the work that they do to make sure that our show is as solid as it can possibly be. I thank you so much. Again, it is always a pleasure to bring greetings from the AME Church on behalf of the Christian Recorder and the AME Publishing. And I look forward to speaking to each of you who will come back tomorrow as we bring on another guest, Reverend Stephen Green. You don't want to miss it. Have a good afternoon.
My sisters and brothers, as we look back through the pages of history, one of the things we will discover is 1787 was a very good year. The African Methodist Episcopal Church was born. 223 years later, I've learned that only a few things never lose their importance. One is voting. Our power is at the voting box. November the 3rd is Election Day. I urge the 12th Episcopal District, home of the Little Rock Nine, to join with the AME Church in the work of the AMV Alert by using the toolkit found at www.amev-alert.org. You will have a step-by-step guide to ensure that your vote counts. Let's get every voter to vote in 2020. I'm Bishop Michael Mitchell, presiding bishop of the 12th Episcopal District, comprising the state of Arkansas and Oklahoma, and also serving as the president of the Council of Bishops, and I approve of this message.
Thank you so much for participating. God bless. Have a good afternoon.
God bless.
God bless.